I have to be careful when I'm talking about this because, you know, the overlords. I would make this an Odyssey exclusive, but I'm not because I want this information to get to as much people as possible. So I'm just going to be careful. There is a decent amount of people who have died, or rather, in terms of how they have classified this. I think this is actually an undershot. Can't prove that because I'm not the one muddying up the numbers as cooking the books, as they would say. But out of New Jersey, we know right now, and the health officials have already informed the media that there are 49 through July the 12th. There are 49 fully vaccinated people, though they had underlying issues. I just want to preface it by saying that fully almost 50 people that have died from what they're saying is COVID, though they were vaccinated. Now, let's give some context here before we put our foots in our mouths. As the outlet reported, according to New Jersey Department of Health spokesperson Donna Lusner. So we are going by way of what the Department of Health, the folks you tell us to listen to, overlords, this is what they said. They passed away. They've all had these underlying medical issues. It says of the 27 deaths of people with underlying conditions, 17 had cardiovascular disease, 7 had diabetes, and 9 had cancer or immunocompromised conditions. According to the outlets, and that's what she said according to the outlet. Now, 5 had chronic lung conditions, 3 had chronic kidney disease, 1 had chronic liver disease, and 5 others were listed as other chronic diseases. All the deaths reported were people over the age of 50, with 30 of them over the age of 30. So over the age of 80, excuse me. So you have a bunch of them, basically every death of the 49, just to put this in context, they were all over 50. And even 30 of those 49, it seems, were over the age of 80. So these were people that they're very, very old, obviously of the most vulnerable portion of the population. That is very important context to add here. 13 of the deaths were between the ages of 65 and 79, and 6 were between the ages of 50 and 64. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reports that 48.8% of the total U.S. population have been vaccinated, while 56% have received at least one dose. So what all this is saying, and again, this is the reason why this is even worth covering, is because they were fully vaccinated, and the idea is that they still passed from COVID in some way. Now, I'm not here to sit up here, and I don't even want to dedicate this video or segment to dispute what caused their deaths and what have you. That's not what I'm saying. More so what I'm doing is pointing out that if you actually dig deep enough and you go to some of these sectors where in the numbers, they're not going to throw them in your face. I think, unfortunately, we look at vaccines, definitely when it comes to COVID-19, as like the end all, unfortunately, and it simply is not. It never was. But also when you're dealing with these age groups, and it's like, you know, you hear the old term, you know, correlation, you know, V more so causation. And for a very long time within the pandemic, and even the CDC, in terms of how they were classifying the deaths, there had to be these adjustments. And like how much the can got kicked down the road before we actually conceded those points was a very long time. We talked about on this very channel out there in Orlando, for example, these fools were classifying deaths, motorcycle deaths as COVID deaths. Like there's deeper meaning to some of these numbers, man. And here what we're discovering, and yes, just 50 people, but still, albeit enough worth covering to understand and at least present this to you, that you cannot look at the numbers at surface level. And for those of you who think that we're supposed to even just trust all the numbers for what it is that they are, just because they told us or they worded it in a certain way, is not necessarily the best of ideas. Because if we're honest with ourselves, there's a lot going on here. There's books being cooked. There's other context that needs to be added to it. So it shows that it's not as black and white as what some people would like us to believe. And that's basically that the medical industry here and abroad are just honest people who are doing the best they possibly can. And anything that they basically report on is fact, if they work for the public health experts, that is. Though that's not exactly what it is. And there's more and more so to the numbers than simply death versus non-death or even death versus recoveries. There's other things that we need to take into consideration. Now, the problem with that and why that never was what we were allowed, because no, let me backtrack. Basically, we weren't allowed to even have this conversation, which is why I think it got so bad early on. This was the problem with the concept of misinformation or disinformation that the Facebooks and the YouTubes of the world, unfortunately, were trying to end. And what it led to was only one conversation being had. Even when there were experts, even when there were other people that were in this medical industry that came to different conclusions despite having access to maybe even the same data or at minimum having the same sort of education on these like what's taking place right now, or whether it be within expertise. They were shunned. It was still deemed as misinformation. The videos were taken down. And even if what they were saying was a bit outlandish, obviously not all of it was, because even they had to concede that, you got the WHO, the people that the YouTubes of the world are telling us we're supposed to listen to. General Tedros basically comes out and he says, yeah, so we ain't been getting all the information, and maybe we shouldn't have been writing off the fact that maybe this shit leaked out of a lab. Accidents happen. What, you saying that now? Right? Where people were taking off in the event that they even assumed that could have been the case. That's the problem with deeming things as misinformation. Definitely when it comes to public discourse, that's the problem right there. That's what people lose sight of because they can't believe that their beloved public health experts will lie to them. They can't possibly believe that. So that's the problem with the missing and disinformation. You got to allow people to discuss this shit. Albeit there is information out there that's false. But there's a lot of stuff that's being presented as truth that's also false. And the problem is that you've only deemed one side of those as dis or misinformation. You just watched a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake. Catch us live at 12 p.m. throughout the week over at youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and follow us over at odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. If you want to watch the entire video cast after the show is over, just be sure to become a member on the YouTube channel. Of course, the full audio portion of the podcast is available for free on all major digital platforms, or just visit forcanonsake.com.